Hi guys, and welcome back to episode 5 of the Project Class 08. Today we'll get the weathering on the bonnet finished. The weathering on the cab won't be done because I still haven't got the transfers yet. And all intents and purposes the project will be complete. Let's head over to the workbench and get this thing finished off. As you can see here, we've got a nice square-ended flat brush, a not so square-ended flat brush, and a small narrow flat brush. I'm going to be using these two powders from Meg, Metal Slag, which is a slightly brown colour, and black, which will be for the exhaust soot. And a tiny drop of water. Whoops, rookie error, forgot to press record. We've changed a bit. All we are using is the Metal Slag pigment to start with. I started off with the large flat brush, dipped in the water to make the brush slightly wet, dabbed off the excess water, and then applying with the brush. You haven't missed out really. But everywhere there is a panel line or a corner, wet the brush, dab it off, get rid of the excess moisture, and a little bit of powder on the brush. I'm using the small brush now because I'm in the smaller detail parts, and just dab it in. Any panel lines where dirt's going to collect, it looks very hard at the minute, but you've got to remember this is powders, this isn't paint, so we'll tone this down in a little while, but plenty on to start with, using the water to bond it to the where you want it. Just tiny bit of water, tiny bit of dust, and stipple it in. All in the yellow here, into the recesses of the grills on the side. Just work it in, across this door, down this panel here, just everywhere really. It looks a mess, doesn't it? But it's not, it's good. This is working nicely.
And the dirty air gets sucked into these vents here. Work it in there nicely, around the hinge detail.
Down the side here, trapped in the corners. And then on the running board and the battery boxes, everywhere. On the front. Bottom step and the ledges, down below the oil side of the radiator, which is this side. Tuck it in the corners, and I reckon that would be good enough for what we need. So that's the browny coloured Metal Slag. So going back to the wider flat brush and the black, we're now going to do the exhaust. Again, tap off the excess, damp brush and work it around. More on this side than the other side, which will keep more of a browny tinge to it. Work along the vent here because any exhaust blows underneath will come out of this panel. So a bit of black on top of the brown where it collects more. You can be as coarse or as light as you want, it doesn't really matter on this stage. A little bit more around the oil as well. A bit more around the roof. It's all fine because we're going to treat it in a minute. Another bench down here on the other side. Here under the vents. So there we go. That is well and truly over the top of what we need. But that is not the problem because it's not paint. So what we now get is our clean brush, and we can then blend in and mesh it in. If you get too much on the brush, clean the brush off, dry the brush off, and just carry on working again. Just more stippling over, spreading it about. Let's get a bit of tissue, it's easier. Clean the brush off and continue working it in the corners, scrubbing it off where you don't want it. And just blending it together. Let's bring this closer, you might be able to see it a bit better. And if it's too thick there, just dampen your brush, dry it off a bit, and lift some of the dirt off. Dry the brush, and when that evaporates off, come back to that area there. Just work it. Again, just like when we were dry brushing the roof, if you generally go on the middle of the panels, working in the way the weather would go, lifting off, and see, just lift off because it's dust. Just, the more you scrub it, the less there is, the more faded it gets. So just blend the edges of all the bits, the blacks and the browns around the exhaust. Just blend it in and work it until you're happy with the finish. Just periodically give the brush a clean and a dampen and wipe off, and then you can just lift off more. So we'll clean off a lot of this panel here because there's a little bit too much for me. As it dries, you can lift off some more. just by scrubbing it off. You just work it till you're happy with it. And you can always get a cotton bud and scrub a panel clean, spread it about a bit, dampen the cotton bud, lift it off to remove some of the powder. And then once the water evaporates off again, you can continue to blend it and release some of the powder. See, and there's bluer again. Oh, yep, so I'll dry the brush. It looks a lot darker on the camera, I can tell you that much. But just continue. Too much on, so damp brush, scrub it off. And you've got a bluer panel again. Too much on the roof panel there. Wipe it off. Now here on the yellow panel is definitely somewhere where it needs lifting off. Here I'm going to use the tissue. Well, I think that will do nicely. It's all blended on and off the panels. The camera makes it a lot more vibrant than it is. It is a bit more subtle yet dirty. And now to fix it in, you've now got to apply a coat of varnish. I shall be adding a coat of matte varnish with my airbrush, which is really the only part of this process that does require an airbrush. Everything else can be done with just dry brushing and the powders. So there we have it, one very work stained Class 08, blended and looking quite good in my opinion for a heavily work stained vehicle. I shall go and place this on the layout and we'll get a decent picture of it. So there we are guys, that's as pretty much done body shell wise as I can go without the transfers for the cab. So I'm happy with the finish. Since the last video I've slightly tweaked the yellow on the sides of the grills there because they got too washed out by the dirt. Painted the marker lights in blue and the handrail has been picked out in white. So I am happy with how these two Locos have come out, and I think it's been a good little project. You can see the subtle differences between the two Locos, the tonal differences, the slight weathering differences, and of course the big difference being the lack of compressor boxes between this one and this one here, which does make a big difference. And I think I've captured the look of the doors on this Loco pretty much as good as I'm going to be able to get it, I think. So like, subscribe, enjoy modelling, and I'll catch you next time.